about bringing my children to the wilderness areas in the United States, to the national parks. I remember my eldest daughter, she was about 8 years old at the time, and we were climbing out of the Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone. Very beautiful area, two huge waterfalls. And we're climbing out of this canyon, walking up the trail, and coming down the trail to greet us was a big giant buffalo. And the buffalo was on the trail, and it's like, okay, so where do we go now? So we sort of like stood out of the way on top of some rocks, and on the other side of those rocks was a canyon that went 1,000 feet deep, you know? And the buffalo walked right up to us, and the buffalo's nose actually touched my daughter's hands when the buffalo decided to stop, and you could see the breath of the buffalo, right? And she's carried that experience with her all her life. And today she's a professor of environmental literature at the University of Dayton. My youngest daughter, I remember when she was a similar age, we were at Zion National Park. And there were a few college students, and they were there at the same time we were, and they were gathering up rocks to like take out of the park, something you're not supposed to do, you know? You're supposed to leave the beauty there for others to experience, right? Walk, enjoy, see, but leave no trace and leave it as you found it, right? Well, my youngest daughter is like 10 years old. She goes up to these big college students and she says, "You're not taking those rocks out of the national park." And this girl, she says to my daughter Shelley, she says, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" Well, Shelley went right up to her, took the rocks out of her hands, and Shelley said, "You're not taking those rocks out of the national park." Today, she's a national park ranger at Yosemite National Park, and she's an archaeologist and works to preserve cultural artifacts. I took my students there, okay? And they also like developed this appreciation for wilderness, for this touching upon nature, okay? The simple fact is we as human beings, we need nature, right? And we need it not just for all the obvious reasons. We need it for the deep psychic, spiritual connection. These are the circumstances of our evolution, right? Growing up, developing, evolving as human beings in a natural context, right? And if somehow we could like sustain ourselves and be apart from nature, we would be living an impoverished existence. We wouldn't any longer remain fully human. I mean, why are we gathered here on the banks of this beautiful river, you know? This river that is flowing with milk from the Earth Mother, huh? Why are we doing that? It's because we have this deep psychic spiritual connection to the natural world that we have to sustain, we have to develop, and we have to make grow. We need wilderness, okay? It's not just something for us to enjoy a little bit. We need it to maintain our sanity, to maintain our health, right? We need freedom from light pollution and noise pollution in order to rejuvenate our souls and replenish our spirits, okay? So human beings have this deep, deep need for nature and for wilderness. And my parents impressed that upon me when I was a little child. I remember the very, very, very first time that we went to Yellowstone National Park. My father took my hand and we were looking at the herds of buffalo and seeing an occasional grizzly bear. And my dad, he says to me, You see this park here? This park is for all of us, okay? We all own this park together. It's for the enjoyment of the people, but even more than that, it's so that wildlife has critical habitat, has a place to live, right? And so that's what my parents gave me. My mother was a fan of Rachel Carson. She introduced me to Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, when I was 10 years old. I also happened to live in Cincinnati, and the Cincinnati Zoo was actually the home of the last passenger pigeon on Earth. And I remember hearing that story when I was a child. The last passenger pigeon on Earth died here at the Cincinnati Zoo, and it just struck me as such a sad, sad story. I mean, what would it be like to be the last member of your species waiting to die, right? A very, very sad story. But the passenger pigeon was something that used to be in abundance, just like the buffalo used to be in abundance. Fortunately, for the sake of the buffalo, there was a park called Yellowstone that the last buffalo herd took refuge in, and that's how the buffalo survived. But nobody thought the passenger pigeon would go extinct, but it passed a tripping point, and it did become extinct. We have to work together as a global community to do things to constrain human economic activity. We can't be afraid to make people do certain things. Mandates, rules, and regulations should not be dirty words. We need certain areas roped off from development, safeguarded from what we call, quote, quote, development. And we need to impose stricter rules on toxic pollution. And climate change is happening, and we know that it is due to human activity, human economic activity. And we have to do something about that. We really, really do. So I would like to close just ever mindful of the miracle of the rest of nature, you know, all those other species. It seems to me like all we need for a good environmental ethic, all we need for a good environmental ethic is the recognition of the existence of other things. Among American Indians, for example, all the elements of nature are considered living, breathing spirit beings who deserve respect, reverence, and reciprocity. And all it really takes is to recognize that all these other things exist. And if we really recognize their existence, how can we not respect, reverence, and reciprocate the rest of nature? How can we not do that? Okay? Because that's the essence of sanity, is to recognize the rights of the other. Thank you very much.
I think that after such presentations, perhaps it was the best presentation on green economy. Humanity should give in. One presenter proposes numbers, others say about spiritual things. The weather is improving, no rain, we have a 10-minute break.